All right, this weekend we seen Ben Whitaker go to 8-0. He fought Ezra Aranika, I think is how you say the guy's name. And, you know, at the Ben Whitaker is an interesting one. I think there's a lot of talent there, but there's a lot of improvement that needs to happen. And to be fair, when I look at the fight he had over the weekend, he was in there with a guy who, as I said in my post-fight review, on paper, 12-0 was actually a pretty decent record, with 10 knockouts. So you're looking at a decent knockout percentage, and you're kind of looking at that thinking, oh, could Ben Whitaker talked up a good game? He did. But then you look at his resume and you're just like, oh, who the hell are these guys? And what have they ever done? And how many losses do they all have? That's really what you're seeing there. So you can kind of see and be like, right, you got the 12-0, but who couldn't get the 12-0 fighting those types of guys? And against Whittaker, he really shelled up. He didn't do a lot. And to be fair, it wasn't a great fight to watch. Now, you did see some of the talent that Ben Whitaker has. He actually showboated a bit less than we're used to seeing him. He still did showboat, but not as much as I said, we're used to seeing him. So, the performance as a whole by Ben Whitaker, it wasn't bad. He was in there against a limited opponent. But his last two fights, that fight, and especially the Leon Willens fight. Now, Leon Willens, to be fair, he actually, he's somewhat useful. He genuinely is. He's somewhat useful. And he really did come to win, took a couple of rounds off Ben Whitaker. Those last two performances, they haven't really... How will I describe it? I don't want to say that they've necessarily damaged his stock. I don't think they have. But they certainly haven't done it any favours. And you got to bear in mind, I think it was either the end of last year, start of this year. I think it was the end of last year, is when Ben Whitaker... A lot of those clips from him in the amateur, some of his pro clips of him showboating, the movement, the flashiness, they went somewhat viral. And they just started getting his name out to the public, not just in the UK, I think in America they were getting to know him as well. So it was really getting Ben Whitaker's name out there. And I don't necessarily think those last two performances have really hurt it necessarily, but I think those last two performances have shown how much improvement is needed by Ben Whitaker. Now, Ben Whitaker was a good amateur, and looking at him as a pro, I think he's very talented. I think he's got a lot of potential there, but there is things that need to be worked on. I don't understand still why he's not with Sugar Hill Stewart. He obviously turned pro with him for the Willens fight, Leon Willens fight. He had, I don't know who he had in the corner actually, and I don't remember. Wasn't really paying much attention to the corner on Saturday night who he had in there again. But I don't understand why he necessarily left Stewart. It did have something to do with the fact that he couldn't commit Sugar Hill Stewart. The fact that obviously he's training Tyson Fury, he's training guys over in the States. That's where he's based. He's based in Detroit, Michigan. I believe he's based in Detroit, Michigan anyway. And, Ben Whitaker, although he could travel over there, at the end of the day, he's going to be fighting in the UK. So, basing yourself in the States to come all the way over to the UK for your fights, it's not geographically ideal. As well as that, as I said, is he going to get the most attention from I was going to call him Emmanuel Stewart. I was watching a couple of old HBO fights before I started recording this, and I was listening to Manny Stewart in commentary, so that's why his name came into my head there. But yeah, maybe he felt as though that Sugar Hill Stewart has other guys that he's looking after and he couldn't get his full attention. I don't know, but I think he needs to get a trainer. He needs to base himself in the UK if that's where he's going to stay. And I think he genuinely needs to look at the likes. He genuinely does. He needs to look at the likes of Dominic Ingle. Might be good for that style. I'm thinking Grant Smith. Who was a very underrated trainer. Not enough people mention him. I think he is tremendous as a trainer. And I think that he would do great work with someone like Ben Whitaker. Ben Whitaker has all the talent. He really does. One thing about last night, the fight he had the other night, that was I was going to say it kind of was apparent, but it was kind of apparent beforehand. Ben Whitaker is not the most devastating puncher. Certainly not for 175 pounds by standards there. I'm sure his punches don't tickle. I wouldn't like to feel some of those punches myself, to be honest with you. But I would say in terms of the upper echelons, if he's looking to break onto the world stage at light heavyweight, I don't necessarily think the punching power is quite there. That's not to say he's feather fisted. He's not Paulie Malignaggi in there by the looks of things. But he certainly isn't going to be a Beterbiev type puncher. I certainly don't see him being on that level. I don't even see him being maybe even on the Anthony Yard level of punching power, who also was a very, very good puncher at 175 pounds. That's not the be all and end all, punching power. It certainly isn't. But it does help. And as I said in my post fight, with his style, the kind of flashy, reflex, slick movement, moving your head, that kind of style, you do need punching power to keep these guys off you. You really do. When I look at the light heavyweight division, and obviously you kind of look and you say, right, well, what are they going to do with someone like a Ben Whitaker? Now, with the way they've been matching them, they've been gradually stepping it up. He does need work, but I also think as well, he is a fighter where if you move the levels up a touch, you could actually we could get some use out of him. We could really see a little bit better out of Ben Whitaker. I'm looking at guys here in the light heavyweight division, guys like Dion Nicholson. Dion Nicholson, for those who don't know, is based out of Deontay Wilder's gym, Sky Boxing Gym. He's actually from Tuscaloosa. Now, he is a light heavyweight contender, and his nickname is the Equalizer because he has 17 knockout wins in 20 fights. You might think that's a bit of a stupid matchmake. Maybe it is. But his sole loss came, 2021. I remember that. I think that was on the undercard of, no, it wasn't. I was going to say Ruiz versus that guy, what was his name? Areola. It was actually on the undercard of Tony Harrison versus Perella. I think it's how you say that guy's name. He was beaten pretty badly in that fight. That was up a cruiserweight. And the guy who beat him hasn't done much. In fact, he's lost his prior to his last win, he's lost his last couple of fights. So I might look at someone like that. Now, you could say someone with that kind of high knockout percentage, maybe that's a silly one. Possibly you could be right. Powell Stefan, who fought Joshua Buatsi, he might be someone you could maybe have a look at putting Ben Whitaker in there with. Craig Richards, if you want a domestic clash. To be honest with you, having seen how Craig Richards looked, and Craig Richards is 34 years old, having seen how he looked against Willie Hutchinson, I would make that fight now, to be honest with you, because I think Craig Richards is, I don't want to say he's over the hill necessarily, but I think that someone like a Ben Whitaker on the come up, it depends how quick they want to fast track him. If they believe in him, if they really want to, maybe put him in the deep end a little bit and see if he can swim, I think improvements are needed. But I think at the same time that if you put him in kind of, I don't want to say necessarily a sink or swim predicament, I think we'd see the best of the Ben Whitaker. I think there's a very, very talented young fighter there. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I get that people don't like to showboat, and some of them do something. I don't mind it necessarily. Obviously sometimes it can be a bit overboard, but for the most part, I don't mind it. I think that there's a lot of talent there, and I think that if we did put him in against kind of guys like that who are, they'll take him rounds and probably will take him the distance. They'll give as good as they get, but I think for someone like Whittaker, I think he'd be able for those kind of guys, the guys I just named there. Okay, you could understand maybe putting him in there against someone like Nicholson, who's got like an 80-odd% knockout ratio. It's probably silly matchmaking. Yeah, fair enough. But guys like Powell, what's that guy's name? Stefan and Craig Richards, people like that. Who else is there kind of in around that top 50 or top 70-ish at light heavyweight? Who else is kind of there that you can look at? Shaq and Peters. I think it's Shakran Peters. He's been in there with the likes of Craig Richards as well. I think he fought Dan Aziz, if I'm not mistaken. Luke Keeler, don't know why he's up at 175 pounds. That would be a fairly run-of-the-mill win, though, to be fair, for, I would imagine, I was going to say Ben Whitaker there, because he has no business at light heavyweight. Luke Keeler, 37 years old. He's rated on BoxRec at light heavyweight, so that's why I'm saying maybe someone like that. There's guys there that you could match him with, and I think we would see and we're seeing not a bad Ben Whitaker, but I think we can see improvements, definitely. And I think that the right type of fights will improve that. What you don't want to do is some of the things that boxers have been guilty of, which is, when I say overmatched, there's overmatched and then there's some of the overmatches that boxers have done. Like if you see some of the guys Fraser Clark was fighting, and I know Fraser Clark, I'm not tipping him to go on and conquer the heavyweight division or anything like that, but when you see some of the early guys he was fighting, with the amateur background he had, you laugh, because you're just like, what the hell? I'd understand giving some of those guys the guys that Fraser Clark fought early in his career to a novice pro who didn't have much of an amateur background, I'd say fair enough. Yeah, go for it. But god damn, an experienced amateur turning pro who was, I think, didn't he get a bronze medal or something like that in the Olympics? You're feeding him those type of guys. Get the F out of here. They don't need to do that at boxer. I think that the only way forward for Ben Whittaker, the only way for Ben Whittaker now is forward. And they need to have a look at some of the matches they're putting him in there with. I think there's a lot of talent, a lot of potential. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. When I look at Ben Whittaker, I do see a Marmite character. I thought that he would be a Marmite character when he turned over. I did think that. But I see a potential star in British boxing, because with Joshua, we don't know how long Joshua's going to be around for. He's already talking about retirement the next couple of years. Fury could be done by the end of this year if he loses to Usyk again. They are the two main guys in British boxing. When you think about it like that, they really are the two main guys in British boxing. We may never see superstars on their level. Well, certainly not for the foreseeable future. I don't see it anyway. For the foreseeable future, maybe with the likes of a Telma or someone like that, but I don't see them being... They might go and do great things at world level, but I don't see them having the same appeal to the casual audience that Joshua and Fury had. I don't think even a Ben Whitaker, if the stars all align, will have that kind of, promise or promotion in the media, but I think he'll do well. And I think that if they're looking for a pay-per-view star out of the UK, Ben Whitaker may very well be the next guy for Sky Sports or for British boxing in general, depending on whether he stays with Boxer or not. Who knows? Ben Whitaker has that potential. And when I look at him, I see a talented fighter, and they need to match him the right way. When I say be careful, don't bring him down the levels. He needs to move forward. A lot of talent there. But he also needs a trainer, a proper trainer. Shane McGuigan, Dom Ingle, Grant Smith. If he wants to stay in the UK, they will be the trainers I'd be getting for him. Or one of those trainers. I'll be looking at those guys, definitely for Ben Whittaker. Let me know your thoughts on Ben Whittaker. Do you think that actually, no, it's just all hype and that he's not that good, and realistically, when he steps up, he's going to get found wanting? Or do you think that there's a lot of talent there, and that if he's looked after properly, we could be onto something? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Peace.